It's a great pleasure on behalf of the New England Rally for God, Family and Country to welcome you to this, our third annual rally, and to give you a brief explanation of what we are trying to do. We really have two purposes. One is entirely local in nature, and that is we are trying to persuade the people of the Boston and New England area that it's respectable to be conservative. And we figured the easiest way to do that is to invite respectable conservatives from all over the country to come and talk at this rally and be on display, and to get as many of their conservative, respectable friends as possible to come. And so we are grateful for those of you who have come, because you're helping to do exactly what we set out to do. Because I have seen very few non-respectable individuals in the audience or wandering around among the booths. We have a few, in fact our notorious associate in Boston, Mr. Gordon Hall, is here with Mr. Barry Hoffman, keeping a close eye on what we're doing. And as some of you may know, the Boston Globe this morning had an editorial and advised its readers to keep an eye on us. Well, we're delighted, because the more people that come in to keep an eye on us, the better chance we have that some of them at some point may see something that will raise a few doubts in their minds, with happy results from our point of view. And the other thing that we're trying to do is to provide an opportunity for conservatives from all over the country to get together occasionally, at least once a year, and have a chance to see that people in other parts of the country have the same ideas, same points of view, share them, but also share the same problem of feeling rather lonesome at times with not too many people to talk with. And here you will have a chance to talk with a lot of people who feel the same as you do. And so we have this double purpose in mind. Another thing which we're very anxious to do is to try and give the lie to the very arbitrary and brazen and stupid smear which is directed at us from all kinds of quarters, that we're a bunch of extremists. Because, as I try to explain to audiences over and over again, in political philosophy, the two extremes in my thinking are anarchy, which is no government control, and tyranny, whether it's a dictatorship or a welfare state or socialism or whatever form it takes, which is complete control over the individual. Now, in between those two, and it was an historic battle that has been fought over the generations, our founding fathers worked out the Constitution, which is the complete compromise between those 2 points of view, which means the American Constitution is really right down the middle in political philosophy. And there's nothing extreme about it, except its respect for the individual and his liberty, and the recognition of the divine influence in human affairs. So that when we have groups here that are dedicated to the principle of supporting the American Constitution, they certainly are not to be considered extremists. And anybody who uses that term for a group like that is indulging in a vicious smear, which is not only vicious, but it's stupid. It just can't be justified. The same way, when you come to the question of political action, the two extremes there are the extremes of apathy on one hand, where people sit on their hands and say, well, let George do it, let somebody else take the responsibility, and everybody consequently gets in a mess. Or the other view, where you take a gun and go out and shoot the people in government of whom you don't approve. Now, those are the two extremes in political action. And I know of no organization which is sharing in the rally or helping to support it that believes in either of those extremes. As far as apathy is concerned, we're dead set against it. We want people to get up and do their civic duties, accept responsibilities, and do a good job of being American citizens. But we want them to understand exactly what it is to be an American citizen. And that's why so many of our groups put out so much literature and educational material, to make sure that people understand what it is to be a good American citizen. And then we are dead set against violence. And as a matter of fact, most of our groups, there are some few exceptions, and we recognize their right to a different point of view, but we don't even believe in picketing, although we are being honored by some pickets this afternoon who don't approve of our idea that freedom of speech is still an important liberty in this part of the world. And they are taking particular exception to one of the speakers we have on the program this afternoon. Now, he has come to tell us exactly what happened to him when the government decided to move in and curtail his freedom of action. And it's something that happened to him in Georgia, and if it happened to him there, it can happen to somebody in Boston, Chicago, Des Moines, any other place in the country. And we think it important for you to know the technique which the government used against this particular individual and what the result has been. And I'm sure you will find his description of what happened to him extremely straightforward. We feel it's important that people should have a chance to hear him. Our groups did not picket when Martin Luther King came to Boston. We felt that he had a right to come and express his opinion if he wanted. We think it's an absurd position for him to take. It's inconsistent. It's undesirable. But on the other hand, we raise no objection to his coming. And we think it's extremely intolerant of these so-called liberals to object to our having anybody come and tell us an honest story. We don't have to agree with him either before he speaks or afterwards, but he's played an important role in current American history, and we feel that his story has not been properly relayed to the public, especially in this area, by the newspapers or the other news media, and so we decided that he should have an opportunity to tell that story himself. So even if you don't agree with some of his basic opinions, I hope you will give him a respectful hearing and realize that maybe you hold opinions that the government won't like at some point, and you may be faced with exactly the experience that he has had to face. Now, I do want to say one further word about the way the press has been treating us. They have been more generous than they ever were before as far as the rally is concerned in giving us coverage. But the one thing that really makes me most unhappy about our news media today is the fact that they are not honest. Now, the Boston Globe had a man here yesterday afternoon at a press conference, and he listened to one of our speakers who will be on the program later this afternoon. He may have something to say about it too. But he listened to this man, and among other things, he asked him, well, now you say there was communist infiltration into the civil rights movement in Alabama. Who were those communists? And he named 6 or 8. And one of our other people here, the Reverend Mr. Ward, who is a colored minister and a very courageous American, backed him up in what he had to say. When the Globe article appeared this morning, it said precisely, Reverend Mr. Griswold declined to identify any communists. Now that's an absolute flat lie put out by one of the big Boston papers. And they did not mention the fact that Mr. Ward took part in the conference and that he supported what Mr. Griswold had to say. They made no reference to Mr. Ward because they knew that if they quoted a colored minister from Alabama and Tennessee on that particular subject, that they were...
Mississippi.
Excuse me. He came originally from Mississippi, and he's now functioning in Tennessee. And he has done a wonderful job for us, and yet, in spite of the fact that he was one of the people featured in that press conference, the Globe had no reference to him. Now, we're delighted for the amount of coverage we get, but we do wish they could see their way clear to be honest. And